In the dense jungles of Vietnam, throughout the 1960s and early 1970s, a hidden and relentless enemy waited to claim the lives of unsuspecting soldiers. Amidst the chaos and brutality of the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army deployed a horrifying arsenal of booby traps designed to demoralize, maim, and kill those who dared to step into their territory. But what were these lethal devices? And how did they come to describe the confrontation that still haunts the memories of so many? From the notorious punji stake pit to the deadly bamboo whip, these cruelly ingenious traps took thousands of lives and left many others scarred, both physically and mentally. As the military strategist Sun Tzu once wrote, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." The traps of the Vietnam War exemplified this philosophy, using fear and unpredictability as weapons more devastating than bullets or bombs. Join us as we journey into the treacherous battlegrounds of the Vietnam War, uncovering the sinister world of booby traps that instilled terror in the hearts and minds of soldiers. Let's start with ingenious ambush, a dive into the Viet Cong's guerrilla tactics. During the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong, a communist guerrilla force, used innovative tactics that made them a formidable opponent. Despite being outgunned by US and South Vietnamese forces, they excelled in exploiting their environment and leveraging surprise to their advantage. The dense jungles and rice paddies became their natural allies, offering cover and escape routes. Their most effective tactic was the creation of an extensive network of underground tunnels, like the Cu Chi tunnels. These tunnels allowed them to move unseen, store weapons, and even tend to the wounded. But it wasn't just the tunnels that made the Viet Cong feared. They became infamous for their traps. Simple yet deadly, punji sticks, sharpened bamboo stakes, were hidden in the ground and smeared with poison to inflict severe injuries. These traps were designed to cause fear, injury, and delay, making the terrain a treacherous place for enemy soldiers. The psychological warfare was also crucial. Traps involving snakes and scorpions, and even tampered food supplies, kept U.S. forces in a constant state of fear. General Vo Nguyen Giap, the mastermind behind these tactics, summed it up perfectly. "We will fight the enemy with our cunning and make them die in their anger." His quote captures the relentless spirit and ingenuity of the Viet Cong fighters, a spirit that is evident in the design of their traps. Unraveling the secrets of the Cu Chi tunnels. The Cu Chi tunnels are one of the most remarkable and secretive aspects of the Vietnam War. Stretching over 250 kilometers, this underground network was a crucial part of the Viet Cong's guerrilla tactics. Built between the late 1940s and 1960s, the tunnels spanned from the outskirts of Saigon to the Cambodian border, providing the Viet Cong with a hidden base for surprise attacks, supply routes, and an escape from enemy forces. Life underground was grueling. The tunnels offered little space, poor ventilation, and constant danger. Yet they were equipped with sleeping quarters, kitchens, meeting rooms, and even makeshift hospitals. These subterranean strongholds had multiple levels, secret entries, and hidden exits to confuse enemy forces. Some tunnels were concealed beneath homes, disguised as termite mounds, or hidden underwater in rivers and rice paddies. To protect these tunnels, the Viet Cong set up booby traps, including punji stick pits and tripwires connected to explosives. Despite the ingenuity of the tunnels, American and South Vietnamese forces eventually realized their importance. This led to the creation of tunnel rats, small, agile soldiers who risked their lives crawling through the tunnels to dismantle traps and capture or kill the enemy. Even with these efforts, the tunnels remained a powerful and elusive weapon for the Viet Cong, leaving U.S. forces frustrated and demoralized. The darker side of bamboos. Now, if you think bamboo is just a simple plant used for furniture or construction, think again. During the Vietnam War, bamboo's darker side emerged in the form of punji stick traps. an ingeniously simple yet deadly weapon used by the Viet Cong. These traps, made from sharpened bamboo stakes hidden in the ground, were designed to maim and kill. Their purpose wasn't just to inflict physical harm, but to spread fear among enemy troops and weaken their morale. Punji stick traps were strategically placed along jungle trails, near riverbanks, and around the entries of the Cu Chi tunnels to deter U.S. and South Vietnamese soldiers. To increase the danger, the tips of the bamboo were often coated with venom from poisonous plants or human and animal excrement, ensuring that even a minor wound could lead to life-threatening infections. Though punji sticks had been used in earlier conflicts, they became infamous during the Vietnam War, where their design was refined for maximum impact. One harrowing account comes from U.S. Marine Frank Harbert, who stepped on a punji stick during a patrol in 1968. His injury, though not fatal, left him incapacitated for weeks. The psychological toll was just as significant. The constant fear of hidden traps made soldiers tense and less focused, leading to mistakes and lowered morale. Net and falling traps of the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong's use of net and falling traps is another example of their cunning in the field. These traps were designed to incapacitate U.S. and South Vietnamese forces, often causing physical harm while also instilling a deep sense of fear. The net traps, known as man-catchers, were cleverly disguised on the forest floor. Once triggered by an unsuspecting soldier, a concealed rope would tighten, lifting the soldier into the air and rendering them helpless. These traps were often paired with other devices like tripwires or punji sticks to maximize their effectiveness. One infamous incident occurred during Operation Attleboro in 1966, when U.S. Sergeant Michael O'Brien found himself suddenly hoisted into the air by a net trap while patrolling in Vietnam. His comrades were able to cut him down, but the experience was a stark reminder of the ever-present danger posed by the Viet Cong's ingenuity. In addition to net traps, falling traps were also common. These traps were designed to force soldiers into hidden pits, often filled with sharpened bamboo stakes or other hazards. The tiger trap, a deep pit lined with bamboo stakes smeared with poison or excrement, was particularly gruesome. The psychological effect of these traps was profound. Soldiers never knew when they might fall into one, heightening their sense of paranoia and fear as they moved through the jungle. These traps added a terrifying layer to the challenges faced by U.S. forces in Vietnam. Booby traps and landmines in the Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong's use of booby traps and landmines became infamous for their deadly efficiency and psychological impact. The Viet Cong mastered the art of using simple, locally sourced materials to create lethal devices that caused significant casualties and widespread fear among U.S. and South Vietnamese forces. These traps weren't just designed to maim, they were psychological weapons, meant to demoralize and disrupt enemy operations. Among the most fearsome of these devices was the Bouncing Betty, an anti-personnel mine that would launch into the air and explode at waist height, delivering devastating shrapnel to anyone within range. Originating in Germany during World War II, the Viet Cong obtained these mines from enemy stockpiles and covert shipments. Alongside these mines, the Viet Cong used a variety of improvised booby traps, including toe poppers, small mines meant to maim rather than kill, and tripwires that set off deadly explosions. One of the most insidious traps was the grenade in a can, a hand grenade placed inside an empty tin can. When disturbed, the rubber band holding the pin would release, triggering the explosion. These traps were particularly deadly because they could be easily hidden and were nearly impossible to detect. The psychological toll was immense, as soldiers were constantly on edge, never knowing where the next deadly trap might be lurking. The Viet Cong's use of poisonous creatures and sabotage. The Viet Cong's mastery of psychological warfare extended beyond traditional traps and mines. they turned to nature's most dangerous creatures, snakes, scorpions, and other venomous animals, to sow fear and chaos among enemy troops. These creatures were often placed in hidden compartments or booby traps, waiting to strike when least expected. The fear of encountering such creatures, combined with the oppressive jungle environment, created an atmosphere of constant anxiety. One infamous instance occurred in 1967 when U.S. Marine Corporal John Harker was bitten by a deadly crate while on patrol in Quang Tri Province. The venomous bite caused his arm to go numb, but quick thinking from his comrades saved his life. Harker's experience left him with a lifelong fear of snakes, underscoring the psychological toll the Viet Cong's tactics had on U.S. soldiers. The Viet Cong didn't stop at venomous creatures. They also poisoned food and water supplies. In 1968, a South Vietnamese unit discovered a cache of poisoned rice in the Mekong Delta, tainted with a toxic substance that caused severe gastrointestinal distress. While no lives were lost, the incident served as a chilling reminder of the lengths the Viet Cong would go to sabotage their enemies. These acts of sabotage weren't just physical attacks. They were designed to undermine the morale of the enemy, making every meal and drink a potential threat. Wire traps of the Viet Cong. Among the many tactics employed by the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War, wire traps stand as one of the most insidious and effective methods used to inflict injury and death. These simple yet devastating devices were often crafted using materials like bamboo, metal, and wire, and were set in dense jungles, making them nearly impossible to detect. The primary objective was to maim or kill enemy soldiers while creating fear and uncertainty among U.S. and South Vietnamese forces. Two of the most notorious traps were the snap trap and the slide trap. The snap trap, also known as a whip trap, utilized a wire stretched between 2 points under tension. When a soldier triggered the trap by tripping the wire, the tensioned bamboo or tree would snap back with terrifying force, driving sharp objects like metal hooks or barbed wire into the victim's body. The injuries were often fatal, causing deep, traumatic wounds. One such account by Private James O'Neill, a U.S. soldier in 1966, describes how he accidentally triggered a snap trap, resulting in a severe wound to his leg that required immediate evacuation. On the other hand, slide traps use the natural slope of the land to create deadly pitfalls. A victim tripping a wire would lose their footing and slide into a pit filled with sharpened bamboo stakes, leading to severe injury or death. One South Vietnamese soldier, Lieutenant Tran Quoc Hung, recounted a chilling experience where one of his men fell victim to such a trap, unable to be saved after sliding into the pit. These wire traps were designed not only to cause physical harm, but also to create psychological terror, making every step in the jungle an unpredictable and dangerous ordeal. Disabling Viet Cong traps. As the Viet Cong's deadly traps wreaked havoc on U.S. and South Vietnamese troops, the need for countermeasures became undeniable. By 1963, U.S. forces recognized that addressing this hidden threat was crucial to protecting soldiers in the field. This prompted the development of innovative strategies and tools aimed at detecting and disabling these insidious devices. One key figure in the fight against Viet Cong traps was Captain Ernest "Ernie" Brace, a U.S. Army engineer. Upon arriving in Vietnam, Brace witnessed firsthand the devastating effects these traps had on soldiers and made it his mission to find ways to counteract them. Working closely with local forces and studying captured traps, Brace and his team developed several techniques for detecting and disarming these devices. They trained soldiers to recognize disturbed vegetation, tripwires, and signs of tampered soil. In addition to training, specialized tools were created to help detect traps. The trap probe, for instance, was a long metal rod with a curved tip designed to gently push into the ground, helping soldiers detect hidden tripwires or traps without setting them off. Canine units also played an invaluable role. Dogs, particularly German Shepherds and Labrador, were trained to sniff out human scent or disturbed earth. Back home in the US, further innovations were designed to protect troops, like puncture-resistant boots, lightweight body armor, and specialized helmets. These efforts to counter the deadly traps were vital in reducing casualties and helped soldiers adapt to the challenges of unconventional warfare. A historical tapestry of deception in warfare. Deception has long been a significant aspect of military strategy, shaping the outcome of countless battles throughout history. While the Viet Cong's use of booby traps and guerrilla tactics in the Vietnam War is one of the most famous examples of subterfuge, it is by no means the first or the only use of deception in warfare. During the Korean War, 1950-1953, both North and South Korean forces used various forms of deception. The North Koreans, for example, were adept at using camouflage and hiding their military assets in underground bunkers or natural terrain. Their hit-and-run tactics, often based on their knowledge of the rugged Korean landscape, kept their enemies constantly guessing. South Korea and UN forces, in turn, used misinformation campaigns to sow confusion among the North Korean ranks, including the use of Operation Pole Charge to mislead the enemy about the location of a major amphibious assault. Similarly, World War II saw deception at an unprecedented scale. The U.S. Army's Ghost Army, for instance, used inflatable tanks, fake radio transmissions, and other tactics to create the illusion of a large military presence, leading German forces to misestimate the size of American troops. The British also employed disinformation tactics, such as the infamous Operation Mincemeat, where fake documents were planted on a dead body to deceive the Nazis about the location of the Allied invasion. Going further back, ancient military strategies also emphasized deception. The Greek use of the Trojan horse in Homer's Iliad is one of the earliest examples of cunning used to infiltrate and conquer the city of Troy. Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu, in his Art of War, famously stated, "All warfare is based on deception." If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.